Welcome to episode 110 of Sport SA Daily Diary. Today we turn to one of the most capped Protea athletes of all time, lawn bowler Gerry Baker. Good afternoon, Gerry. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, thank you. Good, thanks, Adam. Nice to be in contact with you.
Yeah, lovely to chat to you. Gerry, you've got an amazing story. Before we start, am I correct in saying you are the most capped South African sportsman of all time?
Well, I don't know about South African sportsman. I think I'm definitely probably the most capped bowler, and my real claim to fame is probably that I've played most Commonwealth Games of all the sports. So when we played in, I think it was Glasgow, I played 5 by then, and I was tied with the swimmer. I think it was Cameron van der Berg, and not quite sure. It might have been another guy, but and then last time around at the Gold Coast was my 6th Commonwealth Games, and that's the record apparently.
Yeah, it is a record. I have done a little bit of research on you, and that is one of them that came up. Gerry, let's go back a few years. Obviously, bowls you only got into a little bit later. When you were at school and a younger lad, did you play any other sports, or did you have interest in other sports?
Yes, I was probably a little bit of a jack of all trades. I did. In our day of schooling, you played in every sport sort of that was available. You didn't really specialize. So I did the hockey and did the cricket and dabbled with those a little bit after school as well at sort of university level. And then I got, I was brought up in the Free State in Bloemfontein, and I went to school in Kimberley. And then I got transferred with my job. I was with KPMG in Bloemfontein. They transferred me up to Johannesburg, and still played hockey for the Wanderers. And only after about 2 or 3 years in Johannesburg, I was fluttering around with a bit of bowls now and again, but it wasn't my main sport. And then I got more and more sucked into it, and as I got more into it, so the other sports sort of declined.
And Gerry, I mean, bowls have traditionally been known for older crowds, but you've been in the game for more than 25 years, so you must have started in your mid-30s. What made you start bowls as a younger man?
Yeah, look here, my father played at provincial level, so I was always around the bowling greens. I went to a boarding school, so I wasn't at home that much, but I was always around the bowling greens. I always had a little bit of a talent for it type of thing. I can remember growing up, when I was really young, and after the play had ended, I'd get on the green with my father's bowls and chug these things down to the other side. And so I think I've always had an interest in it, and then met a lot of people. But I think that the way you put it, you're 100% right, and that's the big challenge of bowls, because it never has been an older person's game. At competitive level, it's always been very, very young. For example, if you dial back to the 70s in the famous 1976 World Championships where South Africa won all 5 gold medals, Kevin Campbell was an early 20-year-old. Bill Mosley, Doug Watson, those sort of names that are synonymous with bowls were very early 30s. So at competitive level, it's always been young. There's always been the whiskey and milk brigade, absolutely, that gets out there on a Sunday morning and enjoys it. So it's a sport that you start very young, and you can play till you're really very old. And I think one of the challenges of the administrators of the game is to change that perception that you just said, where it is for an older person.
And Gerry, it's very much a skill-based sport as opposed to sort of hardcore fitness, like you would say about a rugby and a football. How did you learn the skill? Obviously, you learned from your dad, but I've played bowls a couple of times at work events and so on. It's not as easy as you guys make it look out on TV, where you just sort of roll the ball down the green. It's quite a skilled profession.
Yes, look here, everything at a high level takes a lot of skill. And so, there's a lot of dedication, a lot of practicing. I think you need that inherent sort of, I always felt I had a little bit of a natural, the deliveries, my action came fairly naturally to me. I didn't really have to really practice it. Going back, and some of the people that might be watching this a little bit later would, if you took a person like Doug Watson, he was considered an absolute natural, where in the same category of international player, a guy like Bill Mosley was a real hard worker at the game. He didn't have that natural ability. He had to put in the hours and hours, where Doug came a little bit more naturally to Doug. So I think it happens in every sporting side. You take probably a golf swing like Ernie Els's, you can't replicate that. You either got it or no coach can get it that smooth. So it's one of those things. So I've been a little bit fortunate in terms of that ability, and it's come fairly easy to me.
And Gerry, you started sort of your mid-30s. When did you realize that you were actually pretty damn good at this? And you could make not a career out of it, but sort of a profession in professional sport.
Yeah, so when I started out in Johannesburg, like really full time, as I said, I dabbled with the game a bit in the Free State and had one or two successes there. But when I started here full time, I started and I joined a guy, Bill Mosley, and we played in my first major event was the South African Championships, and that was a huge tournament in those days, and we ended up winning it. So that was my first event out of the blocks type of thing at national level, and we won the South African Fours. That was in 1989, and then Southern Transvaal, as it was called in those days, now Central Gauteng, has always been the dominant province. It's been big, it's been strong, and then I made the Southern Transvaal side, as it was known in those days, 2 years later. And then I probably realized that to make the Southern side in 2 years after playing the game is quite, maybe I'm onto something. And then I think it was virtually 2 years after that, or maybe 3 years after that, I made the South African side. So I've got sort of successful fairly quickly, and then I haven't been out of that side for the last 25 years. So it's been a real, it's been great for me. I've really enjoyed it, and the competitive side of it, when you talk about, I played a bit of bowls for a couple of seasons with a guy like Kepler Wessels, and when you see a sportsman that has captained South Africa at a major sport, and you can see how the game of bowls grabbed him, then you realize that this game has got something, and probably we let ourselves down in the marketing.
I certainly think it's one of the most underrated games. When I have played the few times that I have, it's been massively entertaining and great fun. Just back to Gerry, you represented Southern Transvaal. Did you then have to sort of up your level of training and the amount of training that you put in to then progress to the South African side, or was it a sort of continuous program?
It was more or less continuous. What I've always liked to do, I've never been a Monday to Friday sort of practice guy. I like to focus on an event and practice for that event and make that like a bit of a challenge to get to. So if a big event was coming up, like locally, our biggest event is probably the South African Masters, I would spend a couple of weeks prior to that really getting into it and try and practice for that event. After that has slipped away. I'd probably downscale the practicing and get more to the weekend stuff, and then try and lift the ante before the interprovincials and so on and so forth. And that's typically, if a bowls tour was coming up or international event, that's how I sort of, I wouldn't be like, I'm not going to go down next week and just practice for the sake of just getting out. It's never been part of my modus operandi.
I mean, you must be an incredibly natural athlete then, that you don't need that level of practice. Gerry, you mentioned you have played for South Africa for 25 years, unbroken, which again, I mean, that's just unbelievable. Unheard of any other sport. Do you remember your first game for South Africa?
I I do actually. It was in those days also. It was fairly competitive. We played in the African states, and that was always your entry. You know, they sort of they prepped you in the African states for the bigger ones to come, and that was my entry. It was in Kenya way back, and then my last game for South Africa was the African states maybe 6 or 8 months ago in Kenya. So I'm sort of a full circle, sort of Kenyan-wise, but I remember it very well.
And you talk about the African states. You won 3 gold medals in the singles titles over the years.
Yes, so the African states, like I say, you know, to put it into perspective, it's you know the smaller countries really battle to field a strong 5-man side. But generally, they've always got 1 or 2 players that are very competitive, and they play in the singles and the pairs generally. So over the years, the African states is, you know, you might not be on the best surfaces in the world. You know, you go into these countries that are small tier countries in terms of bowls, and they might not have the best facilities. So it's always been a good, you know, I've always believed that it's a good entry level for a guy that's trying to make it, because you know, if you can't win there, you're not going to win much more after that. So a lot of players have made the African straights, never to play anything higher, and that's what happens sometimes. But a lot of guys have kicked on from there to play in bigger events.
And you are certainly one of those. You kicked off into the Commonwealth Games, of which you've been to 6. You've won a bronze in singles in 1998. You've won a bronze in 2002. And you won a gold in the pairs in 2010. Of those different medals, is there anyone that sort of ranks higher? Obviously, gold ranks higher than bronze, but personally, is that the highest moment?
Yes, I think so. You know, what the Commonwealth does over and above the World Championships is that the Commonwealth gives you that broadband exposure to all other sports, and you know, in Team South Africa, so your medals count towards the overall team events, and so it's got a lot higher profile. Funny enough, you know, probably my biggest medal, look at the gold medal in Delhi was something special, and that was fantastic. But the toughest one was probably my singles in Malaysia, where I got the bronze, and I was very, you know, I was counted out to play for the gold medal. And funny enough, that year, Roy Gordon from Zimbabwe won the only gold medal, I think, in the history of Zimbabwe at the Commonwealth Games. Yeah, the singles, look here, the singles in any sport is the gold medal. It was the blue ribbon event. So to play singles for South Africa all the years that I did, and to come away with a couple of medals in Commonwealth Games, for example, World Championships, Atlantic Championships, those type of things is quite, I'm proud of that.
You should be, and I would imagine they would be all over your wall behind you. Gerry, in terms of rivalry between countries, obviously Australia and New Zealand are very strong. The Palms are strong. Who is it that you hate losing against the most?
Yeah, you know, we've always had a strong rivalry somehow against Australia. I don't know how it stemmed from it, but they've always been good mates of ours, and maybe that's why there's been more intense rivalry. Because but generally, you know, Australia have been very, very strong at home. They haven't been that successful around the globe. The Scots are strong everywhere. They're strong in rough, heavy greens, wet weather in Scotland. They're strong on the fast surfaces in New Zealand. For me, I would say they're the number one nation to beat. So they just generally, year in, year out, any surface they perform it. But you know, over the years, we've always been ranked in the top 3, 4, 5 of the world. I'm talking men now, and in the last probably 4 years, 6 years, we've slipped down those rankings, and the challenge now is to to get back up where I believe we sort of punch above our weight, because we've only got 20,000, 25,000 sort of participants. So it's not a massive country bowls-wise in terms. So, when we go to Commonwealth Games and we're winning 4, 5, 6 medals there, out of Team South Africa's 60 medals, it's a big contributor.
Absolutely, and it's always been there and thereabouts. Gerry, you mentioned your sort of proudest moment was at the Commonwealth Games. Has there been a game and one specific bowl that has stood out for you over your career that you think, jeepers, I can't believe I actually did that?
Yeah, I think that last bowl that I played at the Commonwealth Games in Delhi to win the gold medal, to pick up a 6, we only played with 6 bowls. So to give you, to put it in perspective, it's probably like, it was the only 6 in the whole Commonwealth Games, in the whole event. It was the only 6 that was scored in the whole event of all the games, of all the pool games and everything. There must have been hundreds of pool games. And to have it on the last bowl of the gold medal match, on the last end, it couldn't be scripted better. It's virtually like, you're virtually in the Augusta, in the US Open, you're 2 down and you albatross the last hole. That type of thing. It's never going to happen in the history, but it happened. And it was one of those that was scripted, and it turned out perfectly. So that is a highlight. But like I say, the singles is still the special stuff.
And the emotion that ran through you when that sort of ball landed where it did?
Yeah, funny enough, when I don't know, look here, my highs and lows are probably fairly close. They're not too sort of far apart. And the guy I was playing with, Sean Adler, just a great chap and a great player. He's a hell of a calming influence on me. So we did well over 10, 12 years as a pair. At one stage I would have said we're probably the second best pair in the world. We were just at every major event, we were either bronze or silver, and in this one gold medal. So in that, and I remember it well because Delhi was a tough place to play. There were security concerns. There weren't many spectators. It was a late game at night, and by the time, with the time lag in South Africa, I think it was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So I remember it well, and I remember like being okay. The shot was played. It only sinks in probably the next day. At the time, it was well done, and we enjoyed it. And the funny thing about it is that we, like I say, it was a late game. The game must have finished about 10 o'clock at night. We waited for the drug tests and that type of thing. And Sean's name came out the hat, so he had to go for his drug test. That took a good couple of hours, and then we did the podium thing. And so we got back to the village late that night. And then the next morning at 6 o'clock, we were off to the airport and back on the flight and back home. So it was no time to really celebrate and really get into it.
And the emotion of standing on the podium and hearing your national anthem and knowing it was for you and having a gold medal, I mean, those moments are completely priceless. You can't actually put value on that.
No, you're absolutely right. I think about it now and the hair on my back stands up. So they are very special. To play for your country is one thing. To play and perform and get medals, and that's another. And then obviously to stand there with the national anthem and to get the gold medal, like I say, it's very few people get that chance. I'm very happy and blessed to have that chance.
And Gerry, you mentioned a little bit earlier that the numbers of sort of professional players in South Africa is quite small. And that there is the connotation that it is an older person's sport. How is it that we go about it in South Africa to change it and to try and encourage younger participants?
Look, I think it's a very big challenge now. I've just been elected onto the World Bowls board, and And that challenge is at world level. And, you know, I think if I look at the numbers across all the countries, they're declining in relation to what most sports are doing. I think there's a big decline in sports. You know, I remember when I played with the Wanderers hockey, we were 12 or 14 hockey sides, men's hockey sides. I think if they've got 3 or 4 today, that might be a lot. You know, if you look at club tennis, club rugby, all those type of sports are sort of on the way down and maybe even in trouble. So bowls is no exception.
Sorry about that. We lost you there, Gerry. You were chatting to us about the sort of age problem and the number of players in bowls.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I think that the challenges for bowls are like other sports where general team sports are declining, club sports are declining. And I now sit on the World Bowls board, and internationally, they've got the same challenges as South Africa. But I think our really the big kicker here is to get the sport into the black communities. You know, we've got a lot of very good black players. They've got an ability. They've got a knack for the sport. They've got an interest, but they haven't got access. And we have to get the access. And you know, you can't expect the communities to come into the traditional clubs that sits in our suburbs. We have to take the sport to the townships, and if that doesn't happen, I don't see bowls in South Africa ever increasing. You know, 10 years ago, the numbers were around about 30,000. 10 years later, they're just above maybe 20. And probably in 10 years' time, if you look at the age demographics of the sport, in 10 years' time, they'll be above 10. And then you might as well write the game off here. So I think the challenge is really to get it into the broad-based community where the game can flourish. It'll take a lot of money. It'll take big commitment from Bowls Africa, big commitment from SASCOC, those type of people to get involved in order to do that successfully. So that's our challenge.
Yeah, I think it is the challenge, and I also think it's a recognition thing. On that point, do you feel as one of South Africa's most decorated sportsmen, you've received the recognition you've deserved? Because I don't.
Yeah, you know, I've never thought of it like that. You know, I think that, you know, I think sometimes the governing body, Bowls governing body, could have done a lot more to promote people. Like, for example, we've got a lady, Colleen Webb, who's really world class, and you know, she should be the face. She should be the poster girl of ladies' bowls or women's bowls. And so I think generally we seem to look at the games run by amateurs. You know, so it's played by amateurs, it's administered by amateurs. And so on a professional level, I don't think the marketing has been there to really put those names out there. And I think the difference between, let's say, a person like myself and a guy like Doug Watson, who still to this day, if you go to any sort of person, you say, look at bowls, and they'll mention the name Doug Watson. Doug Watson, like I say, 76, that's, what is that? That's nearly 50 years ago. But that was the first television that just hit South Africa. That was the first televised sport. South Africa won all the gold medals. You know, so it was a different era, a different government, a different emphasis. So greater, but I think the rewards are a lot greater. I mean, this game has really opened up. You know, if we can get it into the communities where, you know, you've got this massive population that's not playing it and hasn't got access to it, and is probably gifted in it, I think there's a big reward at the end of it.
No, I certainly agree with you 100%. Gerry, it's been great talking, but just in closing, do you still play the game, and do you still have the passion for the game that you did 25 years ago?
Yeah, you know, absolutely. You know, I still play at my club, and I still play for what is now called Central Gauteng, which is the province. So, and just finished up at the Interprovincials a couple of months ago, just before lockdown. In fact, the week before lockdown, we finished our Interprovincials, and I loved I'm playing for Southern Transvaal now for probably 30 years. And I play, and I've really enjoyed the Interprovincials. I enjoy the SA Masters. As far as the international stuff was concerned, I didn't feel I had the passion to put the time in and do that justice. But for the other stuff, still want to win, still want to, still want to go and win here, and still want to. I don't play for fun. We play to win, and so that hasn't changed. Unbelievably so, and I hope it never changes. Actually.
Yeah, I think if something like that in sport changes, it's time to hang up the boots or the bowls or the bag or whatever it's called. But it's awesome to know that you do still have the passion after so long of playing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I really, even when I play for represent Bryanston. We got a very good league in Johannesburg, and I play league on a Saturday afternoon. It's still seriously competitive for me. I still enjoy it. So yeah, so may that long continue.
Gerry, it's been fantastic chatting today on Sport SA Daily Diary. Thank you for your time. It's really, you're an icon in South African sport, and you need to be celebrated as such.
Well, very kind. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks a lot, Adam.
Catch us again tomorrow on Sport SA Daily Diary, where we chat to a lady who made over 300 appearances for the South African hockey team.